One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. It's week 6, and gentlemen, as I was looking through the run sheet, putting together my notes, looking for a theme for this week, we just had a legendary slate in week 5, ranked matchups all over the place. We had like 6 or 7 games go to overtime. Stories were made, seasons were won and lost. And so when I was thinking about what kind of defined this week, guys, I humbly submit, stay in your lane Saturday. Lots of chances for teams to be feeling their championship expectations rise, feeling like they've proven something or having that X factor going, something that's going to carry them surely to the promised land. But I ask, just stay in your lane. Take care of your business. Go 1-0 this week. Shout out LSU. With that, gentlemen, how are we doing?
Doing great, man. We are, I didn't get to get on with you guys Saturday night. I was a little preoccupied with some other stuff, but just what a week. Coming off of an amazing week of college football. You're absolutely right. And anytime we come off of a week that's as hyped, that was a week that we'd been looking forward to, I think, literally since January when we started dissecting schedules and things like that. Anytime we come off of a week like that, it's really easy to just have a post-hype week, right? We're not as hyped about this week. There's not as many attention-grabbing matchups. But we always say it's always these quiet ones. I'll refer to you guys to last year, 365 days ago, essentially, right after the Alabama-Georgia game is when we got the biggest upset, arguably, of all time, when Alabama rolled into Nashville and went home with an L. Literally a week after Georgia. It's setting up this very similarly this year. So pay attention this week. It's a little post-hype sleeper week, if you can borrow a fantasy term there.
Well, and the big thing with these kinds of weeks is you don't want to see the letdowns, right? But it's also so many key matchups where, there's teams that have maybe been contenders, but they're kind of on the fringe, and there's a lot of us kind of sitting here like, are they really? Like, are we really saying that Vanderbilt's a contender because they're technically undefeated, right? And there's a lot of opportunities to be had. But again, staying in your lane is something that a team like an Alabama, a team like a Miami, right? These teams that have come off of big wins up at the top, they need to find a way to just, handle their business, survive and advance. That's what you have to do to get between those big time matchups, right? Is you can't let yourself go to sleep and then, drop a game to Vanderbilt because that'll ruin your season.
Yeah, it gets harder and harder from this point. And listen, am I being influenced a little bit by my own team's past history come, week 6, 7, 8? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Hand up on that one. But I think for a lot of teams, I talked about this on the recap show, signing up for 60 has never been more valuable than it is now because we've never had more parity in college football than we do now. And so the ability to finish through the line every single week and just focus on what you do well, your game plan, how you adjust, I think that's truly going to set the eventual champions of conferences and then the national champion apart. Because Trey, your prediction that nobody's going 12-0, it's looking more and more prophetic by the week. Most of these teams feel so evenly matched that yes, home field is a massive advantage. But in the case of Penn State and Oregon, if you get a team that's clicking on the right cylinders, you can have a team walk in your trap, take over your trap. And I think focus is at an all-time premium heading into this week. Speaking of focus, for the new Jimmies and Joes who are tuned in, have found us through the guests that we've had, the content that we've been putting out, welcome. Glad to have you. Would ask that you hit subscribe, follow the show. We continue to grow and build this community of Jimmies and Joes, and it's a whole lot of fun, and we'd love to keep doing it with you. Also would invite you to check out our presenting sponsor, today's episode, all of our episodes, Underdog Fantasy, for a limited time only, guys. You can play just $5 and instantly get $100 in bonus funds if you use our code 3TechPod. This is truly a limited time offer. They could not stress that enough in the email that I got from the rep the other day. So hurry up, sign up with us, as we know Jimmy's and Joe's are doing. If you want to bet on the, play MLB playoffs, if you want to play NFL going on right now, we've got hockey, little stick puck coming up as well. Basketball's around the corner. So if college football is not the only thing that you'd like to play fantasy in, you've got plenty of other options. Play that first $5 lineup, get $100 in bonus funds, and let us know who you're picking each week. Like I said, we've had Jimmy's and Joe's send us our winners. We've been doling out some fine plays, some winners. Trey, you had some winners. I had a couple winners last week as well. So
we're on a little bit of a streak. I don't want to jinx anything, but we're on a nice little streak here.
That's all I'm saying. So anyway, lot of fun things coming down the pipe. We hope you join us over on Underdog Fantasy. Thanks to them again for being the presenting sponsor here. Trey, with that, let me kick it over to you for our news segment. There's one big bulletin board item, a change of the guard up in Fayetteville.
Yeah, Sam Pittman got axed. Sunday is when that news came out, as we're recording this on Monday evening. Fourth Power 4 opening already in this cycle, guys, when you think about Virginia Tech, UCLA, Oklahoma State, already the fourth in-season firing. Of course, we have Stanford as well, not with a current interim coach. So I guess 5 technically openings already in the power conference level. This is not something that I'm necessarily shocked by. I think even in the preview season, guys, we were debating on if this week would be when Sam Pittman got fired, because we were looking at the schedule. We saw the bye after Notre Dame, saw a strong potential that it could be 2-3. That's how it played out, 2-3, and just really a microcosm of his tenure at Arkansas so far, right? You look at the just stats throughout the course of his tenure, and this is coming from Chris Mahler. He goes by Vern Funquist. He's on typically on the Shutdown Fullcast, but he said this on that SEC podcast with SEC Mike. 71% of Sam Pittman's losses were versus ranked teams. 47% of his games were against ranked teams, and 56% of his losses, guys, were by one score. So I saw a lot of clips going around Arkansas Twitter the last couple of days of just random games that have been decided by one. You take your pick. Like, you could probably circle 5 or 6 games. A lot of people are circling that A&M game where the strip fumble at the goal line is run all the way back and it's handed off to another defender. We love that one, of course. That was the infamous kitchen game where I did not come out of my kitchen because we were doing well. I was in the kitchen when that happened. Anyways, I mean, you can circle probably 2 or 3 games every season where if you flip a couple plays, Sam Pittman's not only still has his job, he's like in the running for SEC Coach of the Year every single year and has Arkansas competing for playoff spots in a 12-team bracket. So just a crazy tenure, a lot of highs. The highs were really high when you think back to like the 2021 season, some of the hype that he was getting at other points in his tenure, but the lows, man, just unable to steady the ship and unable to consistently win those tight games. That's ultimately what sunk it.
Yeah, and boy, you talk about what could have been. You know, when he got to Arkansas, so many folks dreamed of the offensive line legacy continuing. And I don't even know that we got that at Arkansas. At times it felt like the offense was mismanaged. The defense has really never figured it out since he's been there. But the offensive line play slacking, that was his bread and butter. That's what he did better than just about anybody else. And Georgia is actively campaigning to get him back in Athens to fix their offensive line. So I think, I've said this for a number of coaches that do one thing really well. Go back to it, make your legacy in that. The grass is not always greener, and we just see time and time again, not everybody's cut out to be a head coach. It's a ridiculously hard job. And I think Pittman is a great offensive line coach, but you kind of need a little bit of a killer mentality to be a CEO and a head coach in today's game. And I don't know that we ever really got to see that from Sam. So certainly wish him the best. Interesting to see who ends up taking over at Arkansas. The candidate list is quite long, depending on who you're reading. I'm interested to see what people think of Arkansas as well. it's going to be a hard place to win in the SEC. And you're not necessarily going to have the resources allocated to football that the Texas schools do, or Auburn and Alabama. You're going to kind of have to make more with a little bit less, I think, at Arkansas. And so I do wonder how that affects the attractiveness of that job to some of these big time head coaches or coaches that are on the hot seat.
I kind of wanted to get y'all's perspective on maybe the funny hypothetical. Is there any chance that they actually hire Bobby Petrino as their next head coach? I know he'll be the interim, and he'll probably, he might pull an upset or two. If he can get the people up there in Fayetteville, having a good time again and maybe feeling a little bit, any chance they bring him back, motorcycles and everything else aside?
If he goes 5-2 in these last 7 games, I think they will.
Okay.
Yeah, but are they going to go 5-2? Like it's not.
That's not the question. That is not the question that was asked. The question was, will they bring him back? And I think if he goes 5-2 against that schedule,
sure,
you'd be hard pressed to not bring him back.
It is interesting to see that they're letting him act like a head coach. I mean, the interim tag's on, but he fired folks today. Travis Williams is gone as a defensive coordinator. Fired a couple of other defensive staffers as well. It's a bad football team. Like I said, the defense is lost, 56 points given up, and not even the offense could get it going this last week at home against the Notre Dame defense that has been susceptible, to say the least. The only touchdown was scored by a backup offensive lineman. So tough times in Fayetteville. We'll see how the Hogs get things turned around. But, gentlemen, let's turn our attention to the big three here in week 6. And while College game day may be going elsewhere, going to Tuscaloosa for Alabama and Vanderbilt, which, boy, say that sentence a couple of years ago and tell me I'm not crazy. We are proclaiming the big game of the week, Miami at Florida State. I think this is where most people are going to settle. This certainly seems like the game with the most on the line. As the Hurricanes go to the Seminoles, Florida State coming off that big upset loss in Charlottesville to Virginia. The Canes are 4.5-point favorites, 6:30 p.m. on ABC. Trey, I feel like this game is so primed for overreaction because you have Miami, I believe, off a bye. They're fresh. We last saw them taking care of business against another in-state rival in Florida. They've already dispatched South Florida. And the one thing that's going to be left in most people's minds is Castellanos throwing an incomplete pass and the field storming and Squirrel White disappearing under a wave of humanity. I feel like there are a lot of reasons to like Miami in this game, but also don't want to just write off Florida State. They're at home. They're a good team. They were in a weird spot last Friday night and it bit them.
I don't want to completely write off Florida State because I think the Alabama game does carry weight, but I'm wondering at this point in the season if the Virginia game carries more weight. I'm wondering if they've got Alabama in a really weird spot, opening the year with a new coordinator, new quarterback, and a really motivated quarterback and crowd and team on the Florida State side. And if they just kind of caught Alabama sleeping a little bit, I don't think anybody's arguing that Alabama is the same team today that they were back then. If they lined it up again, even in Tallahassee, would anybody hesitate to pick the Tide at this point after what we saw last week? I know I certainly wouldn't. So here's my concern for Florida State, and I'll get my pick here in a little bit, but the concern for Florida State is just the recent history that we've seen with them and the perception that we had going in. We do need to throw perceptions out a lot of times. Sometimes we are completely wrong. We do a lot of studying in the offseason, guys, and our conclusion on Florida State was, yeah, they made some really great additions. They're going to be a lot better, obviously, than the 2-10 bottom out that they were last year. But none of us were picking them as an ACC championship contender. None of us were picking them as a juggernaut in the ACC. And again, I'll credit you. Sometimes we need to throw out those preseason expectations and adjust as we go along. Wondering if Florida State has done enough for us to fully throw out those preseason expectations. I'm taking Miami to win and cover in this one. Miami has looked like a complete team at this point. Their offense has shown at times. Their defense has picked it up when their offense has struggled, like in the Florida game. They've won in multiple different ways. This is the best defense that Florida State will have played by far up to this point. And the offense, I'll grant you, the Florida State offense has been a wagon against some weaker competition and against an Alabama defense that didn't look like they wanted to be there. But this is a completely different animal on this Miami defense. The most talented top to bottom, two of the best players in all of college football are on that Miami defense. this feels like a spot where if Florida State does not find a way to win this game, I'm concerned that it could start a spiral. Because you look at Mike Norvell's record coming after losses. I have it on the screen right now. He is 6-17 as a head coach at Florida State following a loss. And I know the Florida State fans will say, hey, how many of those were last year all stacked together? A lot of them. Okay, but my point with that is they're extremely streaky, guys. When things are going good at Florida State, they're going really well, and they can reel off a lot of wins. But the second that crack has hit under Mike Norvell, it has spiraled pretty much every single time. There are not a lot of single losses. It usually leads to a losing streak. So if they can't take care of business at home against Miami in this spot, I'm really worried about what the rest of the season looks like.
Counselor, I appreciate your words. Well put together case. The bench now calls the defense for the Noles forward, and Garrett, I think you're playing the part of defense attorney here. Trey read some of the numbers, and that's not great. At the same time, though, I feel like the result for Virginia last week, yes, stunning, shocking, but then you look at some of the advanced numbers, and it's not like Florida State played poorly. I think they were inopportunistic at just about every turn. They had multiple chances to turn Virginia away, to salt that game away late, and they kind of, I mean, in Deuce Robinson's case, like literally fumbled it away. You like Florida State in this game at home. Explain the case to the people.
I do. I mean, I think that Florida State, look, okay, go back a couple of weeks. We're coming off that Miami beating Florida, and, there's a lot of talk about, it didn't look that good, but, we've said it now. It's, you're coming up with a gritty win, right? You're just finding a way to. And that's good, right? Like, it's good that they've been able to get by, right? Miami has been able to get by and win their games. And there have been some that have been pretty close, like that Notre Dame game. Maybe the offense didn't look fantastic in spots, but the defense stepped up, made plays when they needed to. Again, that Florida game, they didn't really put anybody away. My big concern is that when I'm looking at that Florida game and how the offense didn't necessarily perform up to its standards, that's the best defense that they've played so far this year. I've got the passing efficiency defenses that Miami's gone against right now. They're going up against 33rd in Florida State. Florida was 38th, but then they've also played 71st, 79th, and Bethune-Cookman, who we don't have a number on that one. So look, I'm not going to try to sit here and make the case that like Miami's terrible, right? I don't think that they're a terrible team, but this is definitely a test for their offense to see how real they are. And to see, hey, like, I know that you just struggled against Florida, and, like, I know that there was some rain involved, so, like, okay. But can you do that against a defense that's even a little bit better than Florida's at stopping the pass game? And can you do it on the road is my big question, right? Can you go on the road? Can you handle business in a hostile environment against a team that truly cannot take another conference loss, right? Like, when you're looking at the teams in the ACC, I don't think a 2-loss ACC team gets into their conference championship game. There's too many good teams that I think will end up with 1 or 0, right? And so when I'm looking across this, I think that's a huge thing for them is they can't afford to take a loss. A little bit of wounded animal possibly here where they're saying, hey, we got to bounce back, and they got their stuff at home. And right now, I also think Florida State's probably the best offense that Miami has seen so far. I know that they took care of that Notre Dame offense. They've looked really good in recent weeks. Maybe give the freshman, quarterback there in his first start a little bit of leeway on not executing some stuff in week 1. I'd really be curious to see how that game plays out now, right? Like, you were talking about the Alabama and Florida State game. I'm curious to see what happens if Notre Dame plays Miami, today, right? That'd be really interesting for me to see, hey, now that CJ Carr's developed a little bit and found his rhythm in the offense, what does that game look like? And at the end of the day, those are all hypothetical. These are all things that we could think about. But my big thing here is I just think that Florida State's got the chip on their shoulder. They're a physical team. They're fast. They play well. That game against Bama wasn't a fluke, right? They may not beat them today, but it definitely wasn't a fluke. They're a physical team. They can get after you. And I think there's just something about this offense that has that edge to them where they're going to be able to get in there, do what they need to do to end up winning this game at home. I do like Florida State to win this game outright. I think home field advantage is awesome. I just don't like this spot for Miami, right? The other question about this, too, is we've seen some teams coming off of their bye weeks a little bit slow out of the gate, right? You like to say that, hey, you got your bye week, you're all nice and fresh and rested up. You're also not seeing, game competition for 2 weeks. And if you come out of the, gates a little bit slow on the road and you let this team get up on you, put you in a negative game script, I get a little bit scared about Miami being able to climb back into this one. So I'm going to take Florida State to make a big statement win here. Trey, you said nobody's going undefeated this year. This is about that time that Miami needs to take their loss, right?
Could certainly be. It is an interesting spot, I think, for both teams. And I think you did a good job laying that out. Couple of interesting notes that I jotted down, guys. First of all, this is a battle between two of the best teams in extending drives. They're both extremely efficient at moving the chains, top 25 in third down conversions. Miami, though, is top 10 in the country in stopping those third down conversions. So you talk about, especially early on, not letting an offense build up any rhythm, not letting them find a way to drive the field. Miami has been one of the best at preventing an offense from kind of establishing itself early on in the game, right? Notre Dame had zero rhythm in that game until late, which I'll talk about in just a second. Florida State, meanwhile, top 20 in explosive plays. And you look statistically, they are the top scoring offense. They're the top total offense. I think a lot of that is being bolstered by the fact that they've played East Texas A&M and Kent State. But the point does remain, they know how to move the football. They know how to get it into the end zone as well. Two questions that I have entering this ballgame. For Florida State, can you get to Carson Beck? Miami's offensive line is one of the best position groups in the entire country, and they might be the best offensive line in the nation as well, right? I mean, for me, they're probably one of two or three offensive lines right now that I would say are in contention for the Joe Moore Award. For Miami, my big question is, can you take away Deuce Robinson? He's been able to get just about whatever he wanted, and he almost was able to beat Virginia on the arm of Tommy Castellanos late in that ball game. Did he catch it? Did he not catch it? I guess we'll never know. Ultimately ruled incomplete, and Virginia holds on in that game to win in overtime. But if Miami can take away Deuce Robinson, then it becomes concerning for Florida State on how I think they get the ball down the field in some of those chunk plays. Now, all of that being said, my biggest concern out of all the factors in this game, guys, is not something that Florida State brings to the table. It's actually what Miami has a track record of doing, and that's not closing out ball games. They get up early, and then Mario Cristobal likes to play with his food. How many years have we seen this at Oregon, at Miami, where he just takes his foot off the gas, and all of a sudden, Shannon Dawson and that offensive staff get really vanilla. Even against Florida, where you have a 26-7 lead or final in that game, Miami could have blown the doors off Florida if they just kind of kept trying to move the football. And while Florida, I think, has a good defense, Miami was kind of content to just play field position, bide their time, run the clock out. If you do that against a Florida State team that is desperate after losing at Virginia and will be hungry to win at home in a huge rivalry spot, we've seen that cost Mario in the past. So I think Miami's the better team. I think they've got the better defense. I love that offensive line. I think Miami jumps out to an early lead. I'm concerned if they can hold on to it and win comfortably. So I'm going to take Miami to win, but give me Florida State plus the 4.5. I think this gets kind of weird late in the fourth quarter. We have a very close rivalry matchup by the time that all is said and done.
I need you to break the tie, and you just found a way to sit right on that fence there. So congratulations.
Well, hey, we've got two taking the Canes. We've got two taking Florida State plus the points. I think everybody's a winner in this situation. We'll let the Jimmies and the Joes determine the tiebreaker. YouTube comments, Spotify comments, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are participating in our content. We'd love to know. You taking the Canes, the Noles, somewhere in between, like maybe me, riding on the fence. Let us know. Guys, let's move to the second game where College Game Day will be Vanderbilt at Alabama. Crimson Tide, 10.5-point favorites as we hit record, 2:30 p.m. on ABC. Vanderbilt is 5-0 for the first time since 2008 when they took on Alabama, and then they lost by 55. This is going to be one of the most interesting games on the entire slate because I think Alabama proved a ton against Georgia last week. The offense looked very good. The defense answered some of those questions that we had, although they did give up a number of rushing yards, but they found a way to get it done on the road. Vanderbilt has been scoring points like they're going out of style. And have they played the caliber of opponent that, you would look to by the end of the SEC slate? No, although they did blow the doors off of South Carolina in Williams-Brice. There's something inevitable about Diego Pavia that certainly makes me nervous. And yet, guys, I think I'm going to go with Alabama minus the 10.5 in this one. Alabama, for all their struggles that they've had recently on the road and some close games and some upsets away from Bryant-Denny, they've only lost 2 ranked matchups since 2013. That was a national championship team in LSU that came in 2019, and then it was a very good Texas team that came in 2023 to do it. While I think Vanderbilt is a really, really good football team, and I think they're as complete as maybe they've ever been, I think eventually we've got to get a dose of reality, right? Like nobody's picking Vanderbilt to go 12-0, and I think this is the first of 2, maybe 3 losses. I mean, we'll see where Vanderbilt nets out, but I'm such a big believer in what Ty Simpson and this offense is doing. I think the 4th-ranked scoring offense in Vanderbilt, the top 20 in red zone efficiency, one of the best teams in time of possession. Everything is telling me take Vandy plus the points, but I'm going to lean into my gut. I think Alabama makes a statement at home this weekend.
I am going to take Alabama to win, but Vanderbilt is going to cover the spread. I feel very strongly about that because when Diego Pavia is involved, crazy things happen, and things that should not happen end up happening. So it feels weird to say something as simple as that, but I do think Alabama is going to win this game because, like you mentioned, the Alabama program is fantastic at home. Kalen DeBoer is fantastic at home as a head coach. He has not lost a home game as a head coach, guys, since he was at Fresno State in 2021. Wow. He's 29-2 overall as an FBS head coach at home, straight up. That's really encouraging. And you look at all their struggles last year as well. Every single time it's been away from Bryant-Denny Stadium. So I think I'm confident that they can find a way to get it done. I think that Vanderbilt has all of their attention after last year. I mentioned off the top that this is the exact same spot other than it being on the road last year. It was right after the Georgia game last year that Alabama played Vanderbilt. Same exact setup, this time in Bryant-Denny. Alabama has all of their attention, but Vanderbilt's good enough to make this a close game, guys. This is not a little Cinderella story anymore. If you look at some of the power ratings and the advanced metrics that people have out there around college football Twitter, just pick your favorite one. Vanderbilt is quickly rocketing up the SEC standings in those power ratings. You look at the projections, the projected win totals. I've seen some computer models that have them as a 10-2 team. So this will be a signature win for Alabama if they are able to pull it off at Bryant-Denny. I will say, though, I think Pavia keeps it close, and I think Alabama does just enough to win this game by about 7 to 8 points at home, pulling away, maybe getting a late score and stop. But Pavia is going to keep this close because this is a brand of football that Kalen DeBoer's Alabama has struggled with, not just against Vanderbilt last year, but against Florida State this year, against Oklahoma a little bit last year. Ball control, running the clock, that was the exact recipe for Vanderbilt last year. They took over on 3rd down. They were 13 of 19 on 3rd and 4th down last year, held the ball for 42 minutes in that game in Nashville. And has Bama figured out stopping the guys on 3rd down? Nope. They're still 101st nationally this year in getting off the field on 3rd down. So if you're looking for alarm bells and PTSD for Tide fans, that's the statistic to watch, because if Vandy can play ball control and just keep Alabama's offense off the field, even as explosive as they are, they got a ton of explosive plays in Nashville last year, and they still weren't able to fully overcome that deficit because they just didn't have enough time. They had the ball for 18 minutes. Scoring 35 points in 18 minutes is amazing, but it's about the maximum you could possibly expect.
Well, and Trey, I'm with you on this, that I think Vanderbilt keeps it close because I just think this Vanderbilt team is too proud to get stomped like that, right? I don't think that they have that kind of rollover and quitting them, especially not with Pavia at the helm. He's just not a loser. He doesn't like to go out there and just give up. He's going to give it everything he has. You know, we were saying, the homeless man's Johnny Manziel was how he was once referred to. He's got the actual Johnny Manziel on his sideline in this one, and that's a guy who knows something about walking in Bryant-Denny and leaving with the dub. So I'm not going to pick Vanderbilt to win this one. This is definitely a game that if Bama messes around, the Commodores are going to walk out with the dub. That's just going to be what happens. because there's not a lot of room for error with this. If you look at Diego Pavia, is completing 74% of his passes. He leads the SEC in touchdown passes and passer rating. They got 3 guys that are averaging over 13 yards per catch. They're a very explosive offense, and they can score points in a hurry if you're not careful. You also got to kind of factor in, look, I know that Alabama win over Georgia was impressive. They didn't score a point in the second half. They went the entire second half without a point. That little, shush the crowd moment, that happened right before halftime. So, for me, when I look at this, I say, okay, this is a Bama team that could be streaky. This is a Bama team that could disappear for a couple minutes. The reason I don't think that they do is because I don't trust that Vanderbilt defense for a second to stop Alabama. They're not bad against the run. Actually pretty good against the run. They're only giving up 79 a game. But they've recently given up 258 and 274 through the air to Georgia State and Utah State. Those aren't necessarily bad teams, but that's some big numbers in the air. And I just don't feel comfortable saying that, Ty Simpson's going to sit around and not do something like that. I'd almost guarantee a 300-yard performance out of him. I think he's going to be really, really good in this one. That is if maybe Ryan Williams can stop dropping open passes. That's, maybe something he's got to figure out is if you're streaking on an open post, you got to maybe secure the ball and then waltz into the end zone or something like that. So, look, it's Bama coming off an emotional win against Georgia. Definitely a letdown spot, but I think they're going to get up for it. I think they're going to go ahead and walk out with the dub. But I think Vanderbilt keeps it close, right? I just think that maybe I'll even take the possibility of a super late just for the pride of it, score a touchdown to make it a, 9-8 point game, something like that, just to sneak in under that 10.5. But I just don't see the Commodores getting blown out in this one.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a blowout. I think I kind of net out at 14 is where I would expect what I would have expected the line to be inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. And you're right, like the Vanderbilt passing defense is trending towards giving up more and more yards. It's actually the second time that you've referenced Georgia State getting up a bunch of yards. It hadn't resulted in any wins, but I guess
they can move the football. Can they score?
Just can't
No.
Score. The issue for Alabama's defense, I think, and I alluded to this, will be keeping them out of the red zone, because once Vandy's gotten inside the 20, guys, unlike a team like, and forgive me for firing a stray towards the 40 acres, but Texas, a team that seems to get less and less efficient as the field shrinks, Vanderbilt statistically gets more efficient. And I don't really know how that works, but Diego Pavia loves to pull out a little misdirection. You get the triple option flavor inside the red zone. They've been good throwing the ball down there as well. And so if Bama can keep them out of the red zone, I don't know that Vanderbilt is going to be able to get the big chunk plays, the big explosive plays perhaps. But Trey, to your point, if they're just consistently wearing them down, moving the chains like they did last year in Nashville, then it gets a little uncomfy come late third quarter, early fourth, I think, for the Crimson Tide fans. Ty Simpson, we've said, is probably going to get his. Is this week a get-right week for Ryan Williams? Like, eventually he's got to remember how to catch the ball, right? Last year surely wasn't an aberration, right?
I don't think so. I don't know if it's just yips or if it's a sophomore slump or whatever it might be. He does need to get going for Alabama to reach their true ceiling, because, Garrett, to your point, they could have run away from Georgia again in that first half. Imagine if he catches that bomb touchdown on the first drive. Like, it's off to the races. Alabama might have a first half that looks very similar to their first half last year against Georgia. So for them to reach their full ceiling and not get got in one of these games, I think Ryan Williams really has to step up. But the good thing for Alabama is they have a guy like Jeremy Bernard on the other side of the field, who I think most teams in college football would be thrilled to have as their number one wide receiver.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the thing you got to remember about Ryan Williams is he's only 12 or whatever he is. He's still growing into his grown man's body. So, like, you got to give him a chance to just grow up at a certain point, right? I don't know how that actually factors in, but no, he's going to be fine. He's plenty talented, right? It's just he's got something that's going wrong. Maybe he's got to put a little something on the gloves. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe he's got to switch out his gloves. It's the wrong brand. The ones that he's wearing are a little too slick or something. I don't know what the deal is, but he's got to figure out a way to get it right, because he's too important a piece in that Bama offense to struggle like that. It may not cost him against Vanderbilt. It'll cost him at some point in the season if they're not careful.
He can go Joseph Manjack from TCU. Just no gloves, no bands, just ball player, man.
Come on.
That would be an interesting look. All right, well, let's go to our final Big Three game here. Texas Tech at Houston. The Red Raiders, 12.5-point favorites. They're fresh off a bye. Houston, according to Stats of War, had the least efficient and most unlikely victory in an overtime Friday night spot against Oregon State. The statistics loved the Beavers. Oregon State did everything right in that but win the football game. And yet, Houston's 4-0. They're undefeated coming into this game. And we've got a landmark Big 12 contest between the Red Raiders and the Cougars. I was worried that the Cougars were overlooking Oregon State to get to this point, and that almost was true. But Houston finds a way. They now come back home to the friendly confines. Willie Fritz is doing a tremendous job with Houston. And one of those teams that we pointed to, guys, during the preseason and said, hey, this team might be full of value based off of where they are in this early rebuild. They've looked good offensively. The defense has certainly improved. All they had to do was improve past 14 points is what their offense was averaging last season. They've certainly done that. Trey, start with you. Where do you feel like this game falls with all the expectations now sliding to the Red Raiders side? But Houston is also coming off of a less than impressive performance and certainly need to bounce back in their own right.
It was definitely a look-ahead spot for Houston last week, and you saw when Houston turned it on, they were by far the way better team on the field last week against Oregon State. But, Tech's had a chance to kind of sit in their own stew a little bit, like really read the headlines potentially, get into the rat poison a little bit over this week. Everybody's loving Texas Tech right now. They go down to Houston. I think if this was a road game in a different spot, I'd be more concerned for the Cougars, or for the Red Raiders, I should say. Guys, I think there's going to be more red and black than red and white in the stands down in Houston. If you read the tea leaves on Twitter, Houston, some Tech fans found a discount code that Houston had to shut down because Tech fans were buying up all the tickets and taking over. Shades of TU 15 about 10 years ago. If this was, at Baylor, or if this was at Kansas or Colorado, right, where I'm a little more confident that the crowd can be a factor and not maybe even more than 50% Texas Tech fans, I'm a little more worried about this. But because I think Tech is going to travel really well in this game, I think they're going to have a nice crowd behind them. I think they're going to cover the spread. But the on-the-field stuff, I just gave Houston fans enough bulletin board material there. So you can use it in the hype video if you want, if you guys beat Tech and knock them off. But the on-the-field reason is I think Tech's defensive line is going to be a culture shock for a lot of Big 12 teams this year. The combination of just dudes and depth that they have on the defensive line, I don't know that the conference has ever seen outside of Austin or Norman, or maybe way back in the day at like Nebraska, right? It's something that is just not typical when you think about the depth of guys that they have there, the talent of guys that they have there. Something that a lot of these Big 12 teams are just, quite frankly, not built to handle. And I think that's a buzzsaw that Houston's going to run into in this one. Houston's already really struggled to move the ball consistently against their schedule so far. They put up some points in spots, but it hasn't necessarily been blowing anybody away on the offensive side of the football. And now they're going up against a defensive line that's going to be dang near impossible to block. So I'm taking Tech to cover. I think they are well on their way. The stats say that they have a very good chance of going maybe 12-0 and bucking my trend and my prediction of having no undefeated team. So I don't think the roadblock starts this week.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think that Tech covers this. I think it's a big win for them. They're for real. They're top 10 in scoring offense, top 10 in scoring defense. They're number 2 and 8 respectively. This game being in Houston might make it tricky, but like you just said, there might be more, Tech fans there. Obviously, I'd prefer if I was Tech to play this one at home, but if you got a bunch of fans in the stands, that always makes it a little bit nice. I'm not necessarily expecting this one to be close. Again, kind of like you were saying, there's just too much talent on the defensive side that even if Tech doesn't come with their A game offensively and they have a slower start like they did against Utah, I still think they pull away just because I don't think that Houston's offense is going to be able to do very much, right? There's too much speed, too much rallying to the ball, physicality. I just think it's too good of a defense to really let up a lot of opportunities. I also know that quarterback at Houston does tend to struggle under pressure. So you heat him up a little bit, and I know he's probably going to fall into a couple of things. You'd hope that it could get better. Maybe it'll get better. I haven't seen it from him. So, you heat him up a little bit, bring a little bit of blitz, get him behind the chains, and I think that you can keep Houston's offense off of the game or off the field for most of this game. And I think that it probably ends up being one of those pull away type of things where if Tech doesn't completely run away with it from the start, by, halftime, third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, it's going to start getting ugly.
Yeah, I think I need to see what Houston's able to do down the field before I'm going to be buying them in a game like this. So I'm going to take Tech minus the points as well. I think Tech wins, maybe running away 17 to 21 points by the time this is all said and done. The Red Raiders are not only top 10 in explosive plays on offense, but they're also top 10 in preventing explosive plays. And so if you're going to get into any sort of a shootout with the Red Raiders, you've got to be able to bring your own ammunition, right? And throw a few haymakers yourself. But you're playing against a team that last time we saw them completely shut down a top 5 offense in explosive plays. Utah's offense had no room to breathe. And while it was more on the ground and short than Houston might look to do, I think they are going to take some shots, especially early. We know that Connor Wegman can throw that deep ball. To your point, Garrett, he's got to be given enough time to do it, and I wonder if he's going to have time to sit in the pocket and dissect that defense. I also think Tech is able to take away Tanner Koziel more than what any of the other opponents have been able to do so far. The linebackers, the safeties are just another level of athletic for Texas Tech, and while Koziel, I think, is going to have success no matter where he goes, if he's playing at Ball State or had he stayed at Wisconsin and obviously here at Houston, an extremely versatile athletic pass catcher. I think Tech is going to be able to isolate him. He can't just be the safety blanket for Connor Wegman, right? So I am interested to see how Houston navigates around that Tech defense. I'm also interested to see how Baron Morton plays, just period, full stop. There was a lot of chatter right after that Utah game over, well, what's his health status? Is he going to come back? Does he have the job when he comes back, or does he get Wally pipped by Sir William Hammond, who looked fantastic in basically a half of football up there in Utah? So from all indication, Barron's going to start. He did not lose his job, and he looked good when he's healthy. Just can he stay in and give Tech 4 quarters? That's, I think, what I'm really watching for on Saturday night. That's, again, 6 p.m. on ESPN. Let us know if you're taking the Red Raiders, big number maybe, on the road against Houston that's overperformed, or are you riding with the Cougars in this one? Guys, I wrote 2 other games that just missed the primetime cut, because normally when we get to Saturday storylines, which we will in a minute, we go chronologically. I didn't want to shove these towards the back end of the show. So quickly, let's go over Virginia at Louisville. Virginia obviously in a big upset win. Louisville had to throw it on late. I mean, down 17-0 early to Pitt. It felt like they were completely out of that one. Another Miller Moss road experiment gone awry. And then Louisville comes back and beats the Pitt Panthers outright. And then we've got Texas at Florida. That's the 2:30 p.m. game on ESPN. A lot of storylines there about whether each offense is going to be able to score, who's got the better defense. Garrett, let's start with you. Out of these 2 games, which one are you more likely to give the main screen?
Oh, it's going to be Virginia-Louisville, because that Texas-Florida game I have listed as maybe my ugliest game of the week. This is the Texas-Florida game is the battle of, well, at least our defense is good. Like, that's both of these teams, right? We were getting into this season and we were saying, ooh, boy, look at that Florida-Texas game. Game day guaranteed. Arch versus DJ. Here we go. It's must watch. And now it's like, look away, right? Like, don't look, cover the children's eyes. Don't let them watch this level of football. That's not fair to your children, right? You can't do that. This is just ugly football at its finest recently. And I know that Texas looked really good against the worst team in FBS. I get it. Like, that's amazing. We're happy for you. Here's your cookies. Try not to flex on future accountants. But at the same time, like, can we wait for one of these teams to play anyone with the pulse and show any form of offensive success? Like, I just need to see something from one of these teams before I trust either of them to do anything. So, look, I think there's a good chance that this game could end up being like a 6-3 final if it's just 2 teams that can't move the football against 2 pretty good defenses, all things considered. The question for me is going to be, number one, for Texas. We saw it against Sam. Congrats. Can you do it again, right? Can you do it again against somebody with a pulse? And then the question for the Gators are just like, okay, well, you're getting Dallas Wilson back. This will be a season debut. He's, going to be healthy. There's your talented kid. go ahead, throw him in there. Does that change anything for your offense? Like, can that kind of big play threat over the top be enough of a difference maker against this Texas defense? I don't know. Like, I'm not really sure. And frankly, at this point, I don't really want to say anything good about these offenses because I don't trust it. So, look, can DJ Lagway be efficient, avoid the big mistake? Can Arch find a way to fix his mechanics, not be injured, not, soil his drawers, if that's what Steve Sarkisian was trying to imply? I'm just trying to figure out what the deal is with both of these offenses. Truly, either of these offenses have the talent, in my view, to all of a sudden explode. So this could be a blowout either direction. But for me right now, I think it's probably the ugliest game of the week. And it's definitely the one that I have no read on in terms of the winner. So I picked Texas, I guess, in that one because I've seen something from their offense. But that game will definitely be on the phone until it proves that it's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I think the more aesthetically pleasing offensive game will certainly be in Louisville, Kentucky. I like Virginia to cover the spread. It's a 7.5-point spread. Not sure if I'm ready to pick them outright just because, like I said in the Florida State preview, man, I'm not sure what to think of Virginia. This is also a Virginia team that lost a shootout to NC State. You live by the shootout, you die by the shootout. But I will say, I think if they can avoid the letdown spot and start hot on the road, I'm a little worried that Louisville can pick up the pace again. They've been really sluggish to start these games. You mentioned it against Pitt last weekend, Mitch. Hasn't been just a Pitt problem, though. Go back to the James Madison game. Go back even to their season opener. I think it was like Eastern Kentucky or something like that. They're talented. They have great players, great skill position players. Like maybe the best running back wide receiver combo in the ACC outside of maybe like Miami. But just for some reason, they have not been able to get out of first gear offensively. And if they struggle to do that against Virginia and Virginia races out to like a 17-0 lead like Pitt did last week, it's going to be really hard for them to come back against that offense and shut down the offense that Virginia has. I'm with you, Garrett, on the Texas-Florida game. If you're picking Florida in this one, I think you're relying, I told you guys this earlier today, you're relying on just some intangibles, right? Like you're relying on
look in his
cornered
eye.
The cornerable animal syndrome, the look in DJ's eye, as Billy Napier said at the press conference today. The Napier last stand, right? A home game off a bye, all that stuff. And, to be fair, there's a little bit of a narrative developing with Dallas Wilson. There's a 5-star freshman coming in to save the day, just like DJ Lagway last year. It's a big-time game at home that they won a couple of those last year. So this is a really good defense that I think is going to give Arch some problems and give that Texas offense some problems. But they can also get God on the ground. And if Texas is willing to commit to the run, then I don't see how they don't win this game eventually. It might be ugly, but I think they'll get out of there with a win. But the question is, Mitch, and I asked you this in our group text, like, will they commit to the run?
That is the question.
Did they get Baxter or Wisner back? Those guys are
They're supposed to get, I think, Wisner back. One of those two guys at least is.
Yeah, because I'm like, without their top two, that's like devastating to their ability to run the football.
I might have the specific guy wrong, but I think they're supposed to get one of those two back this week.
I think it's Wisner that's back this week. Correct us in the comments. Obviously, we get stuff wrong all the time. So let us know if it's Baxter. I thought he was done for quite a while, but maybe I had that wrong. I think Texas has to commit to what's going to work on the road, away from home, an intimidating place to play. Look, Arch may have gotten more comfortable throwing the deep ball. The offense sure looked like it was clicking against Sam Houston, but you take a step up in competition again, which if Florida can hang their hat on anything, it's defense, right? And they held Miami to just a handful of points, really, until that game kind of got away from them late, and their offense just couldn't stay on the field. They held LSU's offense to almost nothing. Not necessarily sure that's a huge accomplishment with what we're seeing from the Tigers, but there is a theme where Florida's defense does not allow the momentum to build on the other side of the ball. The problem is that offense just has not been able to get anything going at home or on the road. It feels like the game's moving too fast for DJ Lagway. It felt like the game was moving too fast for Arch early on too. I don't necessarily know that I trust either of these quarterbacks, but when you're asking me which team do I trust more, I'm going to say Texas. Behind a good offensive line, they do have the talent. I mean, their running back stable is 4 or 5 guys deep, right? Like if it's not Wisner or Baxter or whoever, they've got plenty of blue chips ready to step up and make that next step. I like the cohesiveness of the Longhorns better in a game where they're not going to be surprised, right? They're not going to be thrown by the atmosphere in the swamp. They're not going to be surprised that Florida has a good defense. I don't know what Florida throws a counterpunch with, because Texas's defense is one of the best in the country as well. And if there's one thing that travels on the road, it's your defense. It's how you're able to play in the line of scrimmage. That secondary has been very good as well. I kind of think it's rinse and repeat for Lagway. You heat him up, you get the pressure off the edge. He throws it into double, sometimes triple coverage. I've got the Longhorns running away with this one. And I say running away, I think, 10 to 13 points, but given the way that we've seen Florida play offense, to me, that's a game that's filled with, okay, could Texas be scoring more points here? Sure. Would you like them to have not missed that field goal? Absolutely. But it never really felt like Florida was in danger of coming back or winning this game. So I'll take the Longhorns to double up the Gators. Circling back to Virginia and Louisville, I'm actually going to go with Louisville, guys. And I don't necessarily have a statistic for this. I think Isaac Brown did not get going. The Louisville running game was not good last week. I would like to think that rebounds at home, where Isaac Brown has been very good. Virginia's kind of average at defending the run. I talked about stay in your lane Saturday, right? Finish through the line. I wonder if the Cavs are maybe out of gas. They've got a bye week next week. They've obviously had a lot of success so far for a program that's not used to consistent, sustained success. And we've seen this time and time again. You have a big upset at home. You make a statement in the friendly confines. How easy is it to go on the road the next week and just kind of lay an egg, right? I'm not sure that I'm not accusing Virginia of just coming out flat, but the turnovers at Chandler Morris is very prone to give to the other team, plus the explosiveness that I've seen from Louisville's offense. We saw it last week in their comeback attempt against Pitt. I think there's a little bit more juice for me, a little bit more that I trust with Jeff Brom and an experienced quarterback at home. So I'll take the Cardinals minus the points there. Let's go now to our Saturday storylines presented by homefieldapparel.com. Use our code 3TechPod for 15% off your first order at the Good Brand. Trey, I'll kick the morning slate over to you. It's an interesting slate of games up and down. I think a lot of football casuals are going to see not that many little numbers next to team names and assume this is a sleepy Saturday. But I think there are a lot of really interesting games, starting with Iowa State and Cincinnati. Cincinnati's got a 2.5-point favorite next to their name right now, and that line has moved all over the place. It almost feels like the public is more impressed with Cincinnati's win over Kansas than they are Iowa State bludgeoning Arizona last weekend.
Well, and rightfully so. And ever since Cincinnati, I think most of college football last watched Cincinnati Thursday night of opening weekend when they lost to Nebraska and played Nebraska really close, closer than most expected. They've been quietly pretty good and consistently pretty good, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They came in and just threw punches with Kansas last week. It wasn't a game that Daniels had an off day or something. They were just trading blows all day long. So credit to them for winning that shootout. This is a weird line, and this feels like a very dangerous spot for Iowa State. We talk about all the time how it's really hard to go undefeated in the Big 12 just because the talent levels are so close. And when you go on the road like this, it's usually the teams that you're not expecting that can jump up and get you. Like Texas Tech last year, I know that was at home for Iowa State, but just a weird spot for them. It's a very dangerous spot. They've been vulnerable away from home. That Kansas State win hasn't aged super well to this point. I know Kansas State won last week, but hasn't looked great. Arkansas State almost got them a couple weeks ago on the road. So it's a very dangerous spot. I think I'm going to lean into the line and take Cincinnati and just say, the old Lee Corso special that somebody knows something that I don't.
Yeah, I'm tempted to take Iowa State here to win this one. I think they're the better team. Definitely think that they're, the more tested. I mean, obviously that's a good win that Cincinnati just had against Kansas, but I think Iowa State's going to play more defense than Kansas. I'm not very impressed with Kansas defense so far this year. I think they're the better team. And I said going into last week that Iowa State's the type of team that just finds a way to win and never makes it look pretty. And then, of course, they got to go show me up and go blow a team out, right? So that's fantastic, right? Make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. But I still just trust this team to win a game, right? So I think that they'll go and do that. The defense will get tested. Cincinnati's doing some good stuff on offense right now, but I think they win.
Cincinnati is a top 20 scoring offense in the country right now. Trey, I think I'm going to join you. This line just does not make sense to me. I feel like Iowa State is the more complete team, but we also saw how good Cincinnati could be at spots for the first half last year, and then they fell apart. This year, we've challenged them to be a more complete team all the way through. I think Nippert Stadium is going to be rocking. I'll roll with you. I'll lean into the Bearcats and say that someone does indeed know something. My ick game of the week, gentlemen. I don't know that anybody should watch this. And if they do, please seek help. Clemson, 13.5-point favorites at North Carolina. Both teams off of brutal losses before a bye week. Clemson obviously getting embarrassed by Syracuse. North Carolina called UCF Central in the pregame press conference and then got boat raced by a UCF team that we just don't think is all that good. This line feels gross. I don't trust North Carolina to do anything. I don't trust Clemson's offense, but I think that little of North Carolina that I guess, a gun to my head, I'll take Clemson to cover.
I'm wondering how many people actually show up to this game. A noon kick. Not going to be a lot of Clemson fans making the trip to help fill those stands in Chapel Hill. You got to feel like Clemson gets right eventually, right? Like, I know that you'd hope. They've been, it's cliche, they've been close, at least against LSU, and they were a few plays away from Syracuse being a little bit different. So I got to feel they're too talented to go this whole season without having a couple games where they get right. This feels like a good get right spot.
Yeah, Trey, I wrote in the notes, Clemson can't lose this one, right? Like, you can't lose. UNC is in a terrible place as a program. Like, remember when this team was in the Orange Bowl a few years ago and playing pretty dang well and had a decent thing going, and now they're, I guess here. I don't really know how to describe where we are as a program at UNC, where you're hiring out like a, retired off into the sunset, NFL coach and his girlfriend to come and run your program. But it's, I don't know. I don't see any way that Clemson loses this one. I don't really think that there's a way that they don't cover the spread either, but I have no desire to watch this, if I'm being completely honest. It's probably just going to be ugly football, and either way it goes, I'm just going to regret that I watched this game instead of one of the other ones. So it probably stays on a little highlight somewhere else, and I'll catch the little cutaways when it's a big-time throw from Cade Klubnik or something, but I'm not interested in watching this game too much. It's just going to be two ugly teams and two programs that aren't really doing very much for me right now.
Trap spot for Michigan as they play Wisconsin. This is another one of those games that I was thinking of when I was coming up with the stay in your lane theme, right? Michigan has a trip to LA next week to play the Trojans. I'm sure they've got to be excited about how they've looked. The offense has certainly found an identity. It's been a lot more progressive than it was last year. And I feel like Michigan has put that loss to Oklahoma in the rear view mirror. It's 16.5 is the spread right now. Feels like a big number to be given away for a Michigan team that is not known to throw the football all that much. But then again, golly, guys, like Wisconsin's bad.
Yeah, Wisconsin is cheeks. They're really, really bad. They're not going to be competitive in this game. I think Michigan handles business. They're going to win. They're going to cover. What I want to see if I'm a Michigan fan is I want to see the pass game become dynamic, and I want to start seeing that it can happen, because there's going to be games on your schedule this year that you're going to need Bryce to step up and be a better, quarterback in the passing game to keep, pressure off. And we've talked about how it's gotten better and how you can respect the offense now. And obviously going and taking care of Nebraska was a big deal, but you got to be able to, if you're Michigan, start to throw the football a little bit downfield, start figuring out who your guys are. This is a good week to try that. So I'd love to see Bryce, kind of rip it a little bit. And if you get in a bad spot, go back to your, just kind of ground and pound game plan. For me, I'd rather try some stuff out, right? I want to try some stuff and see, what can we get away with? What can we work on? It's a big week for Michigan, I think, to work on their game, because I don't think that Wisconsin's going to make it anything close. They are, like I said, they are cheeks. They are bad. They're not going to be very good.
And there's your bulletin board material, Wisconsin.
Nothing to add for me. I think Michigan's going to roll in this one. Bryce Underwood has looked great, and I think I'm really excited to see how he continues to develop. I think this is a great spot for him to get some more road experience before a really tricky game at USC.
All right, give me your quick thoughts, your picks against the spread here for the afternoon slate. Boise State at Notre Dame. Preseason, we were really excited for this one. We had Boise State as a playoff contender. We were trying to kind of mathematically work around if they go to South Bend and lose this game. How does Boise State go maybe 11-1? Notre Dame, could they go 12-0? Both of those storylines are, for the most part, put to bed. Boise State already has a loss and really feels like they need to find some statement if they want to continue believing that they can make it to the playoffs. 22nd in scoring offense are the Boise State Broncos since that loss to South Florida. We know that Notre Dame has had defensive struggles, although you couldn't tell in their win over Arkansas. It's a big number, so does Notre Dame cover against the Broncos?
Yeah, I think they're going to run all over Boise State. I think both Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are going to name their yards. If you're looking for an underdog play, look at Jadarian Price's number for rushing yards, because he's been pretty discounted compared to Jeremiah Love the past few weeks, and he's been almost an auto play, an auto check mark in most of my lineups the last couple weeks. But yeah, the way that you get Notre Dame seems to be through the air, and Arkansas was not able to take advantage of that. I don't think Maddox Madsden and those receivers are going to be able to take advantage of that, and they're just going to kind of name their yardage on the ground for Notre Dame, I feel like, in this one. So, yeah, I think Notre Dame runs away.
Yeah, Notre Dame is, I think, on the warpath right now. If you look at what they did to Arkansas, right, they go out and they score on every possession that they touch the football in the first half. Arkansas comes out of the break and stops them. They run a fake punt up 42-13. They are absolutely on the warpath to try to make a point. If they're going to make the playoff, it's going to be 10-2 in style points. This is what they're going to do. They're going to beat them by a whole bunch of points because it's what they have to do to make the playoff at this point.
Yeah, I think Marcus Freeman continues to kind of twist the knife, build up as much goodwill as he can, as much resume building as he can possibly do. So I'll take Notre Dame minus the points as well. Syracuse at SMU, 16.5 points. That's a lot of points for the Ponies, who have not looked good defensively, but Syracuse also struggled. Steve Angeli, gone for the year. It's Ricky Collins. Yassine Willis is kind of the key for me in this one, guys. Like, he's the lead rusher for Syracuse, and at times he's looked very good, but Syracuse also wasn't able to get a single thing going against Duke in that defensive front last week. I think if Syracuse is going to cover, they've got to get something going on the ground. I want to say that I'm going to believe that Syracuse has a little bit of a bounce back, that they keep it respectable. We stay in the vicinity, as SVP says. So I'll take Syracuse plus the points here.
I don't think that SMU plays super good in this one, but I think that they're going to play well enough to cover. I haven't been super impressed with SMU, especially on the defensive side, but Syracuse is one-dimensional without Angeli at the quarterback spot. It's sad to see. Obviously, I think we were all really excited for their season, what they could have done at Clemson, but yeah, it's a sad scene right now. So I'm going to take SMU to cover that number and win fairly decently large.
Yeah, I'm taking SMU as well. Coming off a bye for the Ponies, coming back home after a tough one over at TCU. I think last year, once they got to their ACC schedule, they kind of took it up a notch and looked like a better team. I think we're going to see that a little bit, especially against this tier of ACC team, which is where Syracuse is at without Steve Angeli. So I think they'll make a statement this week.
Final game in the afternoon slate that we've highlighted, Michigan State at Nebraska. Sparty put up some points against USC, hung around in that game late night on the road. I mean, body clock was all out of whack. They're on the road against Nebraska, who are 10.5-point favorites. Trey, do you trust Dylan Raiola to win a potential shootout or put up enough points to salt away and cover this line?
I trust Dylan Raiola. I don't know if I trust his offensive line to give him time to work, but he's been fine, guys. Like, I think the slander of him has been grossly overblown, because I think when he has time, he's been really, really good. I don't think Michigan State is necessarily a team that can give Nebraska as many fits as a team like Michigan did, as a team like even Cincinnati did week one. So I'm going to tentatively take Nebraska to cover this spread and win this game by about 13-14.
Mitch, are you asking if I trust 75% completions, 11 touchdowns, and 1 interception? Because I do. I absolutely trust that. Dylan Raiola has been just fine. The issues with Nebraska are not Dylan Raiola, and it's not the persona either, because he's kind of playing up to it. I mean, he's playing really, really well. I think Michigan State's a better team than we're probably giving them credit for right now. If you watch that game, which I did, kind of late night in the gym with a couple other guys who are just insane that wanted to stay up super late. That was a pretty good game out of Michigan State. They had some things go really well for them. I don't think it's fluky either, so I think they'll keep it closer, but I do think Nebraska wins this one. This might be a game that you'd rather turn on than a bunch of them. Like, this might end up being a really fun game to watch.
Little misdirection from me. I'm going to take Nebraska minus the points. Michigan State cannot get to the quarterback. They cannot get off the field on third down. They give up points in bunches, and I think this Nebraska team is fast enough, physical enough to certainly get into the end zone, maybe pull away, win this one by 14-17. To the evening slate, where there are certainly some interesting storylines, and there are, again, some big lines. Last week, I felt like every line was 7.5. This week, I feel like it's right on the edge of, did we really run away from it, right? A lot of 2-score plus lines. We've got Minnesota at Ohio State minus 23.5. Mississippi State travels to College Station where the Aggies are laying 14.5. That feels like a big number. And Colorado at TCU minus 13.5. Colorado just blew a 14-0. Was it a 14-0 start to BYU? The Cougars came back, won that game on the road. TCU obviously trying to bounce back after their loss to Arizona State. Trey, I'll give you first word here. Which of these lines would you lock up if you had to?
Lock up? I think I'm going Ohio State, guys, because that's a huge number. I like Minnesota, but they're actually getting a night game, first of all, or at least an evening game. That's not something that they typically get. So they're going to be fired up for that. And guys, Ohio State might have had the most impressive within context win in the whole country last week. I know Oregon's was very impressive. Oregon Duck fans, I'm not trying to crap on you, but Ohio State going 2 time zones away, raucous environment, and just blowing out Washington, where the point where that wasn't even close. Very, very impressive. It's clearly the number 1 team in the country in my mind. I think they keep rolling at home against Minnesota.
If I had to lock up one of these, and this might be just the trigger or whatever, but I'm going to try to take the bait from the head coach here. I'm going to lock up A&M minus 14.5. I'm really impressed with Mississippi State, but I think that they're fairly straightforward on offense. And after that performance we just saw out of the Aggie defense, I think this one could get lopsided. It's a blackout game at Kyle Field. Got a lot of things going right for A&M right now. Not a very good offensive performance in terms of finishing drives and penalties and things like that. All things considered, though, I think this is a spot where the Aggies get to kind of neck crack a little bit. I think it's going to be a big win for the Aggies.
I certainly hope that's the case. Mississippi State has not fared well inside Kyle Field. There's been a lot of blowouts, kind of not both ways. There's been a lot of home cooking, I think, in that series. A&M does not like to go to Starkville. Mississippi State dreads coming to College Station. So I do think the Aggies win. It's an odd line. It's playing with my psych factor just a little bit there. Trey, I like your pick of Ohio State over Minnesota. I thought the Gophers were going to be one of the better teams at running the football, right? We know their offensive line is just, you can set their watch to them. This year, they're 88th in the country in running. Ohio State can take away the pass. They really limited whatever Washington tried to do schematically last week, which was impressive. So I think Ohio State may be safe laying those points. I would lock up TCU over Colorado, though. TCU at home in a big-time bounce-back situation. I know that was a disgruntling loss. TCU definitely feels like they should have won that game. But then I look at the rosters and getting TCU back at home where they will be comfortable. You've got a Colorado team that I think is still searching for an identity, certainly on defense, where once points start accumulating, Colorado's just not able to stop you. I think Hoover, who had a down week in Tempe, puts up some big numbers. Eric McAllister gets going as well. So I like TCU big over Colorado in that one. Guys, I want to shout out our G5 game of the week. If you are around on a Friday night and looking for something to watch, well, my friends, can I interest you in a little Conference USA slugfest between Western Kentucky and Trey's Delaware Blue Hens? The Blue Hens are kind of cooking right now. They're 3-1. They get Western Kentucky at home, and they're a favorite right now. 2.5-point favorites. Trey, you believed in the Blue Hens. Their offense has actually been rather impressive. The defense, maybe not so much, but do you have a play here?
I'm shocked that they're favored. Western Kentucky has not looked as good when they're not playing Sam Houston week 1. So
That's fair.
I've been a little disappointed with the follow-up performances of Maverick McIver in that offense. They've squeaked out a couple wins, had a loss to Toledo that they probably shouldn't have when you just look at the talent on the field. I'm leaning Delaware. Guys, I'm leaning Delaware. They just have a good vibe about them. They've beaten a really solid UConn team already this year. I think Delaware can get it done at home on a Friday night.
How about that? I'll take the other side. I like Western Kentucky plus the 2.5 here. 11th in passing offense. Have they had trouble getting into the end zone at the clip that we're used to seeing? Yes, I'll grant you that. But they're also 33rd in passing defense. And Delaware has had a nice statistical season through the air. I think Western Kentucky may be kind of built to score and stop what Delaware has done well. So I'll lean into it. I'll take the 2.5 points, and I'll duel you in Newark on a Friday night.
I'm going to vibe with Trey with the Delaware. I love this. It's fun.
Blue Hens have been a fun Twitter presence to get introduced to.
I'm just here for the vibe.
Yeah, I've enjoyed getting interact with Blue Hen Nation. Trey, one more thing. You're taking us out west.
Yeah, I've got my eye on the Mountain West this week, and more specifically, 3 surprising teams at the top. UNLV, boy, were we ready to write them off after that Idaho State game week 0 when all the eyes were on them. They're 4-0, and they've survived against Miami, Ohio last time we saw them out on the road. They're back on the road at Wyoming, always a tricky place to play. They're the only unbeaten team in the Mountain West. If they can get by Wyoming, the schedule really starts to soften up a little bit before they go to Boise. Fresno State's 4-1, another team that we kind of wrote off after week 0 when they got blown out by Kansas, but haven't lost again. They're going hosting Nevada, and then New Mexico wins the Rio Grande rivalry last week over New Mexico State. They're 3-1 in Jason Eck's first year, and they're at San Jose State, who was 1-3, blew a massive lead against Stanford last week in a regional rivalry game. Rest in peace to my championship game pick. I don't think that's happening at this point, but New Mexico, really fun story, and I'm excited to see how these 3 teams do the rest of the way.
I'm going to take us out west as well. I'm going to go Duke on the road against Cal. The Cal Bears, 4-1 guys under Justin Wilcox. They've looked good with a standout freshman quarterback. For Duke, they got right last week against Syracuse, obviously blew the doors off of the Orange, and yet I'm still asking, will the real Duke and Cal please stand up? Cal got decimated by San Diego State, 34-0 is their one blemish on that record, but it's a weird road spot for Duke. That is a long time to go away. I need to see consistency for Duke, and I want to see them string a couple wins together. So I don't have a play here, but I am going to be an interested onlooker. I believe is this a Saturday night game? Yeah, this is one of the late games. This is like the late ESPN game, the 9:30 game. So certainly a reason to stay up late while we're editing.
Definitely. I got one more thing as well, and this is maybe a little bit of a come on, you can do it, I believe in you type of thing, guys. Oregon State, we talked about them being, kind of Stats Awards, best team that didn't win. They can't seem to get anything going right. To me, the reference I'm going to make here is that they seem like George Sanderson on Monsters Incorporated, right? Where you're just like, hey, he keeps getting the sock on him, and then the guys come in and tackle him to the ground and shaving him and screaming 23-19 and the whole thing. This is kind of what Oregon State's season has felt like so far, is they just can't quite seem to figure out a way. And there at the end, they talk about how he's got to go to Nepal, nice, quiet Nepal. Well, guess what, Oregon State? You're going to Boone, nice, quiet Boone, to play App State. Let's see if you can get something right. Beautiful this time of year. Foliage, right? Let's say all the buzzwords. Let's see if we can't get you a win in nice, quiet Boone.
Oh, App State's just not very good this year. At least they haven't shown the ability to be very good this year. Got blown out last week. So, yeah, maybe not. For Oregon State to be 0-5 doesn't feel real. Doesn't feel real. That team has been all kinds of bad. I think we all expected a lot more from them this year. So sure, go pick up a road win, get a little bit of momentum for the back half, and go into the Pac-12 feeling good about your football program. I think that would be a great finish for Oregon State. We're right in. Let us know where you stand on all of these games, any of these games. What's your one big thing? What are your best plays? We will have our underdog plays coming out later on this week, so stay tuned to our YouTube channel, our Twitter channel, Instagram as well for those best plays. We are putting out some winners lately, so if you like cash for free 99, just saying, drop us a follow, drop us a subscribe, give us a rating on your podcast apps of choice, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, we're there as well. For Trey Reeves and Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Stay in your lane this Saturday. And until the live show, so long, everybody.